In these problems, we're being asked to find gaps, clusters, peaks, and symmetries in these line plots of sets of numbers. So what are all these things? Well, a gap is where you have this space with no data. So that would be a gap, and this would be a gap. So if there's no data there, it's a gap. The peak might be obvious. That's going to be your high point. So those two are pretty easy. A cluster is a bunch of numbers where you have lots of data. So this would be a cluster. And then symmetry is about whether or not you can cut the thing down the middle and have it reflect the same way on either side. So this is a line of symmetry. You can see it's the same on the left as on the right if you cut it right down the middle. Okay, now that I've drawn all over this problem, let's see if we can read it and figure out what the answers are. This says Bill collected 16 seashells from the beach and recorded each of their weights in ounces. The results are shown in the line plot, and those are the weight of the seashells in ounces. So A says true or false. There's a cluster from 28 to 30, and that's exactly where I wrote cluster because you've got all this data in that group together with gaps in between or on either side. So that's true. The next one says there's a gap at 33. And if I go to 33, no, I see data there. A gap means no data. So that's false. The gap is at 31 and 32. And then the last one here is the data set is symmetric. And yes, that's true because I could draw this line of symmetry and it was the same on the left and on the right. So that is true. All right, let's do B. It says the peak of the data set is at what ounces? And we see the peak right here. This is the high point on our line plot here, and that's at 29. So the peak of the data set is at 29 ounces. Okay, let's try another one of these. And before I even read the problem, I just want to get a visual sense of this data. I see a cluster here. It looks like the peak is at 6 and 7. And then let's see, there's a gap here, there's a gap there. And then it doesn't look symmetric to me. I don't see any place where I could draw a line that would cut this exactly in half. So let's work on this one. A says there's a gap from 4 to 5. It looks like that's true. 9 says the next one says there's a cluster from 9 to 11. No, that's a gap there, so that's false. The data is symmetric. I don't think so, so I'm going to mark false for that one. And it says the peaks of the data set are at blank and blank miles, and that looks like 6 and 7 where they're the highest. So this is 6 miles and 7 miles. And that is a little bit of work with finding gaps and clusters and symmetry and peaks from plots on number lines.